Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into 17th century London today.
Oh, wow. Sounds intriguing.
It is. We're looking at a play called The City Wit, or The Woman Wears the Breeches.
Catchy title. What's the source material?
We've got the full text of the play itself, published way back in 1653.
Wow, so we're going straight to the source.
Exactly. And this isn't some stuffy historical drama, it's a comedy.
A comedy. About 17th century London. I'm intrigued.
We should be. It pokes fun at all the social dynamics of the time, especially the clash between these honest London citizens
Right.
and the sly, often in-debt world of courtiers.
Ah, so it's a bit like a social commentary.
Oh, absolutely. Think juicy scandals, unexpected twists of fate,
Ooh, I love a good twist.
and a whole lot of clever scheming.
Scheming, you say? Sounds a bit like modern-day London sometimes, with everyone trying to get ahead.
You're not wrong. London back then was booming with new money. You had these social climbers trying to break into the old hierarchy, and everyone seemed to be chasing fortune. Does that sound familiar at all?
More than a little. So who are the players in this game of social chess?
Well, at the heart of it all is our main character. Crazy. He's a young citizen, kind of naive.
Naive, how so?
Well, his good nature constantly gets him into trouble.
Ah, I see. One of those too trusting types.
Exactly. And the play starts off in a way that really sets the scene. Picture this. A lavish dinner being prepared. But instead of some happy host greeting guests,
I'm picturing it.
we find Crazy alone on stage, lamenting his empty pockets.
Oh dear, that doesn't sound good.
It gets worse. It turns out he's hosting this feast for the very people who owe him money.
He's that's certainly setting the stage for some financial instability.
It is. And right from the beginning, the playwright, Brome, throws us into this world where generosity is more of a liability than a virtue.
Ouch. Poor Crazy. And I bet it doesn't help that he's got a mother-in-law who sounds like a real piece of work.
You're talking about Peanut. Oh, she is something else.
She sounds like she could talk a bird out of a tree.
Absolutely. But she's more than just comic relief, although she does have some hilarious lines.
Really? Like what?
Well, there's this one where she basically says honesty in London is for fools and children.
Oh, wow. Straight to the point, isn't she?
Peanut's seen it all. And she's fiercely protective of her family's place in this changing world. She sees these new, rich folks disrupting the old order, and she's not having any of it.
It's almost as if she represents those anxieties people had about the old ways disappearing.
Absolutely. And she's seen firsthand how playing by the rules often means you lose.
A cynic at heart, then. So what happens when Crazy's creditors come knocking?
Oh, that scene is pure comedic gold.
Tell me more.
We have this courtier, all fancy and important acting, saying he can't possibly repay his debts because it would damage his reputation.
Oh, the irony.
Then there's this scholar, totally buried in his books, claiming that intellectual pursuits are, like, way more important than money.
Of course, the classic absent-minded professor routine.
And the best part, Crazy's own brother-in-law refuses to pay, saying family loyalty is his excuse.
Oh, come on. You can't make this stuff up.
It's brilliant satire. Makes you wonder if the playwright had some experience with freeloaders himself.
I'm sure he did. So how does Crazy react to all this?
Well, it pushes him to a breaking point. He goes from being the trusting victim
Right.
to basically vowing revenge. He's going to use his wit to outsmart everyone who's wronged him.
A classic turn from nice guy to schemer. I like it. So who's first on his list?
Who better to target than a wealthy widow? Enter Widow Tryman, ripe for the picking.
Ooh, this sounds interesting. Widows and their fortunes were always a good target, weren't they?
They were, and Crazy, disguised as a doctor, uses all his charm and flattery to win her over.
Playing on those societal expectations, a wealthy widow needs companionship, security.
Exactly. It makes you think about the pressures on women like Tryman back then. How much freedom did they really have?
A good question. And one that Brome seems to be hinting at with this whole setup.
He is. So Crazy's playing the long game here.
Indeed. And I bet he's got more tricks up his sleeve.
Oh, you have no idea.
As we get deeper into the City Wit, it's clear that Brome isn't just out to make fun of social climbers.
Right. There's more to it than just laughs.
He's exploring some really big questions about human nature.
That's what makes it so interesting. It's funny, sure, but there's this underlying depth. Like even the title itself, The Woman Wears the Breeches.
Oh, absolutely. That's a bold statement about gender roles. And it's not just about Widow Tryman, is it?
Exactly. It makes you think about Pionet.
Oh, Pionet.
Well,
She's a force of nature, that one.
she starts off like this overbearing mother-in-law, obsessed with tradition and social status.
Right, always trying to control everyone.
Those scenes where she's berating her son and daughter are just brilliant.
Pure comedy.
Yeah.
But then, as Crady's schemes shake things up, Pinette starts to change.
She does. It's almost like she's forced to question everything she thought she knew about power.
She sees how these men, Crazy, Linfi, Wolfie, they manipulate everyone to get what they want. And she realizes her own limitations.
The limitations of those traditional roles.
Exactly. And it all culminates in that moment when she decides to wear the breeches.
Such a powerful image.
It's not just a costume change, it's a rebellion against the rules.
Like she's saying, fine, if that's how you play the game, I'll play too.
But on her own terms. I wonder how audiences back then reacted to that.
I bet they were shocked. But it speaks to how relevant the play still is.
Yeah.
We're still dealing with those same issues of ambition, equality.
Power struggles. They never really go away, do they?
They don't. And Brome doesn't shy away from the dark side of that ambition. Even Crazy, he starts to change.
He does. He becomes more ruthless as he goes along.
Remember that scene where he tricks his old apprentice, Jeremy? Makes him think he's been cut out of the will?
Oh, that's a tough one. It's cruel, even if it does serve his bigger goal.
It makes you think about those moral gray areas, right? Can you do something bad for a good reason? And how far is too far?
Exactly. It's like Brome is asking, do the ends justify the means?
Heavy stuff for a comedy, but that's what makes the City Wit so great. It makes you laugh and think at the same time.
But it's so inventive. Brome uses every trick in the book to keep the audience guessing. Disguises, mistaken identities.
And play within a play.
Don't
Yeah.
forget the scene where someone pretends to be possessed.
It's like a whirlwind of comedic energy, and it all just highlights how absurd these situations are.
Speaking of absurd, we can't forget about Sarpego.
The scholar, he's hilarious. So pompous and full of himself.
But easily manipulated.
Which is exactly what happens to him. He ends up broke and humiliated.
A classic example of knowledge without wisdom.
Right. It's like Brome is saying, you can be smart, but if you don't have common sense...
You're gonna get played.
Exactly. But let's not get too serious. It's a comedy after all.
Right. And Brome knows how to deliver the laughs.
Oh, absolutely. Like that scene where Piana catches her husband Tobias with another woman.
And thinks it's Widow Tryman. Yeah. Classic mistaken identity.
It leads to this whole chain reaction of misunderstandings and accusations. Brome's use of physical comedy is just genius.
And it builds and builds until everyone is exposed, all their hypocrisy and scheming out in the open.
It's a moment of pure comeuppance. But it also makes you wonder, is anyone truly innocent in this world?
That's a question that stays with you long after the play is over.
So much has happened in the City Wit. Crazy scheming, Pianette's one-liners, and those hilarious twists and turns. But I have a feeling there's more to come.
You bet. Brome keeps the audience on the edge of their seats right to the very end.
It's a true comedy of errors, and when you think things can't get any more complicated, well...
They do. And one of those moments is when P&A, remember her?
Oh, how could we forget Pianette?
Oh, she discovers your husband, Tobias. Let's just say she finds him in a rather compromising situation.
A bit like a scene from a modern sitcom.
Exactly. But with those amazing 17th century costumes, of course.
Of course. But it's not all laughs, is it? There's something deeper going on there.
Right. Pianette, she spent the entire play trying to control everything, right? Get her family ahead. But this discovery, it throws a wrench in her plans.
It does. It's a moment of vulnerability for her. Exposes just how fragile those social ambitions can be.
Absolutely. Like the play is saying, look, no matter how much you try to plan things,
Life's gonna throw you a curveball.
precisely. And Pianette's reaction is priceless.
She doesn't blame Tobias, does she?
Not a bit. She blames the other woman, accuses her of seducing him.
It's denial, pure and simple.
It is. But it also shows those double standards that existed back then. Pianette, as a woman, has to uphold this strict moral code.
Well, men, well...
They get away with a lot more.
It's subtle, but it's a powerful critique of how gender roles played out.
It is, and it leads to one of the most surprising parts of the play, Pianette's decision to wear the breeches.
That's not just a costume change, is it?
Oh no, not at all. It's a declaration of independence by wearing men's clothes.
She's stepping outside those traditional roles.
Exactly. She's like, if the world wants to play by these rules,
I can play too.
but I'll do it my way. It must have been quite a shock for audiences back then.
I bet. It makes you wonder, was Brome trying to make a feminist statement?
That's a good question. It's probably a mix of things. Remember, satire exaggerates reality to point out the flaws.
Right, so maybe Brome wasn't a full-on feminist,
But he definitely saw the inequality between men and women.
and he wasn't afraid to use humor to challenge those norms.
Not one bit. And you see how it changes Peanut. She becomes more assertive, more cunning.
Almost ruthless, even.
It's like by embracing these, let's say, masculine qualities.
She can finally fight back.
Exactly. And it's not just Peanut who transforms. What about Crazy?
He's gone from naive to, well, a master manipulator.
He is. But has he really won?
That's the thing, isn't it? He's got the wealth and status.
But he's lost something along the way.
His honesty. His integrity.
That's the moral dilemma at the heart of it all.
Brome doesn't give us easy answers.
No, he doesn't. He makes us think. Are the ends justified by the means? Can you be successful in a corrupt world and stay true to yourself?
It's a question we're still asking ourselves today.
It is, whether it's our jobs, relationships, even how we act on social media.
The City Wit reminds us that some things never change. Human nature, the desire for power.
And the challenges that come with it.
But it also reminds us to look beyond those surface appearances, to see the absurdity of it all, and to maybe have a good laugh along the way.
So what have we learned from this trip back to 17th century London?
Well, I think we've learned that power can be unpredictable, and that social hierarchies aren't always what they seem. And maybe, just maybe,
We need to embrace a little bit of that cunning and adaptability that Crazy and Peanut show us.
exactly. But always, always.
Hold on to our values. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the City Wit. It's a comedy that's as relevant today as it was centuries ago.
And if you're looking for more witty and thought-provoking plays from this era, you won't be disappointed. There's a whole world waiting to be discovered.